Good morning, children. Today in English, in class 11, we continue the chapter We're Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. Yesterday we had stopped when they faced the wave walker and all the people on the boat, of course. They faced the gigantic wave, which earlier was presumed to be a cloud, but it was not a cloud, it was a wave so huge which the narrator had never seen in his entire lifetime. He was an experienced sailor, but this is something extremely frightening and threatening. So we see now the roar increased to a thunder. The roar, that is the sound. The strong gales were blowing, the strong winds were blowing, the waves were so high, extremely high, and increased to a thunder as the stern moved. Stern is the rear of a ship. Moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. And he says for a moment he felt that just as till now the weather had been quite bad, it had been quite terrible, but still they were able to sail along. So they thought that now also the same thing will happen. Ride over means go above the wave and then continue to sail. That means there will be no damage to the boat. That is what they hoped for. That is what he hoped for. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. That was a huge explosion took place, a sound which shook the entire boat. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. Torrent means that large amount of water. There was water all over the boat, green and white water all over the boat, over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel. And what happened was his head hit against the wheel, because he was thrown off his feet, and I was aware of flying overboard. And then the next moment he felt that he was thrown into the sea and found himself sinking below the waves. And shortly he realized that he was sinking below the waves, and he was in such a situation that he could not even help himself. He could not do anything in that situation. It was such a critical situation. I accepted my approaching death. And he says, I accepted means I came to understand. I came to realize that any moment could be the end of his life. That means now he will not be able to survive because he was sinking, and very shortly he will be drowned. And as I was losing consciousness, he had become semi-conscious, and I felt quite peaceful. That meant the realization that he is going to die, that the journey of his life is going to come to an end. And in this critical situation that he found himself, that he is sinking below the waves, there was nothing that could be done. Nobody could come to save him, and neither could he do anything himself. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water. And what we see is, unexpectedly, that this is what he had not expected. He had expected that he felt that his death is going to take place, that he is going to die any moment. But just the next moment, things changed completely. My head popped out. That means suddenly it came out suddenly out of the water. A few meters away, wave walker was near capsizing. And what he saw, as his head came out above the surface of the water, the wave walker was near capsizing. Near means almost. Capsizing means that it had overturned in the water. Her mass almost horizontal, which actually should be vertical. So that is what he saw about the ship. Then a wave hurled her upright, and just shortly then later he saw that another wave came and hurled her through her upright. Upright means back into its original state. My lifeline jerked taut, and he says he felt that the lifeline, which if you recall that it was attached to each member on the boat, so the lifeline jerked means was pulled tightly, taut. I grabbed the guardrails. I grabbed means I caught hold of. Guardrails, that is the rails on the outside of the deck of the boat. So he says, I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through the air into wave walker's main boom. And finally he was able to get back onto the boat despite the situation that he found himself in. He did not give up, and he managed to get back onto the boat, onto the wave walker. Subsequent waves tossed me around. Now, it was not easy for him, but he did not lose heart. One after the other, the waves kept on coming, and as the waves kept on coming, tossed me around. Tossed me around means threw me around, like on the deck, like a rag doll. He says, like a rag doll, meaning like a very light object, one can say. Like a rag doll, also like inanimate. That means he could not keep his feet on the deck because of the flow of the water on the deck. So he was thrown here and there, threw me around the deck like a rag doll. So he was not able to keep himself stand or keep his feet on the deck, and therefore he was thrown because of the water that was swirling around all over the deck. My left ribs cracked, and in this, because of being thrown here and there, because of being tossed here and there, he had several injuries. Earlier, his head had smashed against the wheel. Now, the left ribs cracked. My mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. And he could also feel that there was blood in his mouth, and there were several teeth which were broken. These were the injuries which he suffered. But he did not still give up. Somehow I found the wheel. And he did not he continued his endeavor, he continued his effort, and somehow or the other managed to grab the wheel. Lined up the stern we talked about is the rear of a ship, and waited the next wave and hung on. That meant that he did not leave the wheel unattended, otherwise he would lose complete control over the boat. So that is despite the injuries, despite the injuries, one can say that he was still determined, and somehow or the other he managed to grab the wheel, catch hold of the wheel, and did not leave the wheel till a little later, when his wife Mary appeared on the deck. Water everywhere. Now, naturally, there was water. They were sailing in the boat, of course, in the sea, but there was water everywhere on the deck and everywhere else. I could feel that the ship had water below. I could feel he had not yet gone down. He had not yet gone down below the deck. He had not gone to see what damages had taken place as yet, but on the basis of his experience, being an experienced sailor, he could feel that there had been a lot of water collected inside the boat. But he still had to wait before he could investigate and find out what were the damages that were caused to the boat because of that gigantic wave. But I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. That meant that he did not want to leave the wheel unattended. Abandon means to leave. So he could not leave, he could not afford to leave the wheel at that time to investigate. Investigate what? That is, what were the damages that had taken place to the boat because of that gigantic wave. Thank you.